Hello Earthlings and welcome back to my channel. On today's video we're going to be talking about the case of Barry and Suzanne Morphew. Barry and Suzanne both grew up in the same hometown of Alexandria, Indiana, and they both went to the same high school. They both thrived in school. Barry would be a star baseball player that would be drafted into the Toronto Blue Jays, and Suzanne was well liked and popular. After graduating, Barry would work at a golf course where he would attend to the lawn on his summers when he would come back from school. This is where he would meet Suzanne, because Suzanne's house was actually at the first tee of the course. And at the time, Suzanne was still in high school. They would begin to date, and they would eventually marry in 1994. Barry would go on to start his own landscaping company, and Suzanne would become a teacher. The couple would later have two children, Mallory and Macy, which Suzanne would eventually quit her teaching job in order to raise them. On May 10th of 2020, Mother's Day, Barry would leave for a job in Brooksville, Colorado. Mallory and Macy were both on a camping trip and were returning home that day. They would text their mother Happy Mother's Day with no response. Being concerned, Mallory would tell her father that their mother was not responding. Eventually, Barry, being concerned, would tell one of the neighbors to see if they could look around the house to see if they would find Suzanne, and especially just look for this mountain bike that was there. With no avail, the neighbor said that they saw no signs of Suzanne, and then that's when Barry would tell the neighbor to contact 911. Suzanne Morphew was then reported missing. FBI, local authorities, state authorities, everybody did searches looking for her. There were dive teams that looked into the waterways for her, but with no avail, her body was not discovered. When police searched the area, they would find Suzanne's mountain bike on the side of a cliff on the side of the road near the Morphew house. There was no sign of blood, clothing, or a struggle near the area where her mountain bike was found. Around 1 mile away on the side of a highway, Suzanne's helmet was found, but her sunglasses and her hydration pack was located inside of her car at the Morphew house. All this evidence led investigators to believe that Suzanne might not have been out on her mountain bike that day and that the area might have been staged. 10 days after Suzanne was reported missing during a search of the Morphew house, they would discover what was a spy pen. And this was apparently something that Suzanne bought in order to catch Barry having an affair with somebody else, but inadvertently there was a recording on there that actually was between Suzanne and her secret lover. After months of searching for the identity of the secret lover, they would find out that it was a man who had a wife and children that lived in Michigan. After questioning the man, they found out that the pair met 6 times during their 1.5-year-long affair, and that nobody, not even Suzanne's friends and family, knew about it. Not only did this man not come forward when he found out about the disappearance of Suzanne, he actually tried to cover up the evidence. Though when police finally identified him and interviewed him, he did give up DNA evidence, he gave up phone records, and he gave up deleted passwords to accounts. Police were in fact also able to verify this man's alibi, and he was cleared as a suspect in the disappearance of Suzanne. Though investigators found out that on May 9th, Suzanne and her lover would text 59 times, leading up to the moment where investigators believed that Suzanne was murdered. After they cleared Suzanne's lover as a suspect, they moved to the next one, which would be Barry. And on May 5th of 2021, despite having not found Suzanne's body, they arrested and charged Barry with first-degree murder and tampering with physical evidence, along with possessing a banned short rifle. Investigators believe that Suzanne and Barry had a troubled marriage, and because of that, Barry could not control Suzanne. And the avid hunter himself resorted to something that he's been doing his entire life. He hunted and controlled Suzanne just like he did animals. On August 9th of 2021, Barry's preliminary hearing would begin. A preliminary hearing is when the prosecution presents evidence to a judge in order to determine if that said evidence is enough to take the case to trial. Barry would plead not guilty to all charges, and a judge would set his bond to a $500,000 cash-only bond. Barry would then be released on bond provided by his daughters Mallory and Macy, who believed in their father and believed that he was innocent and stood by him the entire trial. During their investigation, investigators found that Barry had visited multiple places to dump out trash while he was at work in Bloomsville, Colorado. Barry stated that he would often dump trash in accessible places in order to prevent the fine for dumping it in a landfill. Investigators also found That instead of Barry immediately going home after telling the neighbor to call 911, he would go to a neighbor's hotel, drop off a shovel and some tools before beginning to head home roughly after 6 p.m. Another thing that investigators found suspicious is that Barry had some fresh scratches on his arms that they took a picture of 3 days after Suzanne went missing. This only reassured the prosecution's theory that there was some form of physical altercation between Barry and Suzanne leading up to Suzanne's murder. On the day that Suzanne went missing, Barry was allegedly running errands, and he would text Suzanne around 2:26 p.m. to tell her that he was on his way home. Suzanne did not respond to Barry's message, so Barry messaged her again asking, "Did you leave?" And Suzanne again did not respond to his message. Investigators believe that shortly after those texts, Barry would arrive home, kill Suzanne, and clean up the crime. So the investigators wanted to play devil's advocate. Assume that Barry had no idea that Suzanne was having an affair with somebody else. Investigators used a text message that Suzanne had sent to Barry a couple days before her disappearance that was deleted off of Barry's phone as another motive for why Barry would want to murder Suzanne. Suzanne sent, "I'm done. I could care less what you've been up to and have not been for years. We just need to figure this out civilly." Investigators also took notice in a damaged door frame that was inside of the Morphew house. After talking to the previous owners of the house, they state that that door frame was not damaged when they sold it to Suzanne and Barry. When investigators asked Barry if the damaged door frame was a result of an argument or him being locked out, Barry's response was, "I have no idea what that's from." The investigators believe that the damage from the door frame came as a result of Barry trying to get Suzanne after shooting her with a tranquilizer gun. After retrieving phone records, investigators found on May 9th of 2020, Barry's phone was pinging around all the house. Barry states that he was running around the house shooting chipmunks, which he claims are also a very big nuisance there. The investigators believe that the reason why Barry's phone was pinging is that he was chasing after Suzanne all around the house after he had shot her with the tranquilizer gun. Also, when talking to investigators, Barry stated that he went to bed at 8 p.m. on May 9th of 2020. However, his truck's computer shows that the car was put in reverse and backed up towards the home around 9:30 p.m. on May 9th of 2020. During the search of the home, investigators would also find a plastic needle cap found in the family's dryer. This was a very key piece of evidence for the prosecution because they believed that Barry arrived home on May 9th of 2020. He went to the garage, he took the cap off of the syringe that was used to load a tranquilizer dart, then he loaded that tranquilizer dart with chemicals, and then he shot Suzanne. Barry states that he has no idea how the cap got into the dryer, but does in fact admit that he is an experienced tranquilizer dart shooter and does have the knowledge to load said darts with a paralyzing chemical. Barry states that he has this knowledge because he illegally shoots deers, removes their antlers, and sells them. Unfortunately, even though the prosecution had this theory, they were unable to find a working tranquilizer gun or any tranquilizer chemicals inside of the Morphew house. Barry's lawyers state that the cap means nothing though, because investigators could not determine how long it had been in the dryer, nor could they find any evidence that tied Barry to the cap itself. Around 3 months after the arrest of Barry, investigators would find an unknown male DNA inside of Suzanne's Range Rover. After running the found DNA, it would come back a partial match to an unknown man connected into unsolved SA cases in Tempe and Phoenix, Arizona, and Chicago. After this evidence came to light, Barry stated that he was going to file a civil lawsuit. Barry's lawsuit stated that the prosecution withheld more specific exculpatory evidence until after Barry's preliminary hearing. Barry's defense urged the judge to impose severe sanctions on the prosecution for failing to provide the court with the potentially exculpatory evidence. The prosecution states that the reason why they withheld this evidence was because they wanted more time to find Suzanne's body. The judge listened to Barry's defense and imposed sanctions on the prosecution. The judge barred 11 of the 16 endorsed witnesses along with others, including experts in DNA, vehicle data, and cell phone data analysis as a punishment for the prosecution breaking discovery rules. The judge then would grant the DA's motion to dismiss all charges against Barry without prejudice, meaning that in a future time, the prosecution could refile charges against him. And after the dismissal of his charges, Barry would leave the courtroom alongside his daughters, Mallory and Macy. Barry's legal team urged the prosecution to admit that somebody else killed Suzanne. They state that we hope the prosecution quickly admits their wrongful conviction of Barry, an innocent man, and to treat the Morphews as what they are, victims, and that they charge the people or persons that are responsible for Suzanne's murder. He would then go on to file a $15 million lawsuit against prosecutors, the county, FBI, and CBI. The lawsuit states that he is seeking damages caused by all of them. On September 22nd of 2023, during the search for a missing woman named Edna Quintina, who had been missing on May 3rd, investigators would discover remains. The bones were located in a remote area and had appeared as if they had been buried in a shallow grave before they had been scattered around the area. On September 27th of 2023, those remains were positively identified as Suzanne Morphew, 3 years and 4 months after her disappearance. Investigators have announced that the disappearance between Edna Quintina and Suzanne Morphew are not related, and both those cases are open and currently being investigated. And that is the end of today's video. So right now, investigators are still working on the case. They're still trying to find leads and evidence in order to convict whoever murdered Suzanne Morphew, and I do hope that one day, even if it is years from now, Suzanne does get the justice that she deserves. Until next time, be safe, Earthlings. Peace out.